The Industrial Revolution, it literally changed everything. But to really get a handle on just how massive it was, you don't need a ton of books. You just need to look at one single city that was right at the heart of it all: Manchester, England. So let's dive into its story.
Okay, just look at that chart. I mean, check out the line for Manchester. It's practically a vertical climb. In just over 100 years, this small town just exploded into a massive city. This wasn't just growth, you guys. This was a population bomb, and it was all fueled by the promise of work in these brand new factories.
But here's the thing. Behind all those rising bars on the chart, what's the human story? I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of real people, individual lives that were completely turned upside down by this new industrial world. So what was it really like for them?
So we're heading into industrial Manchester. This place became the world's very first industrial city. It was the epicenter of this whole new age of machines and wealth and, well, massive social change. They actually called it the Shock City. Why? Because it showed the rest of the world this brand new and, honestly, often pretty brutal way of life.
And the engine driving all this change? It's a word we hear a lot: urbanization. Basically, it's just city building and the massive movement of people to those cities. For pretty much the first time in human history, huge numbers of people were leaving the countryside, leaving behind everything they knew, and flooding into places like Manchester. All of them were looking for jobs and, a different kind of future.
All right, now let's talk about the new middle class, the winners of this new age. Because for some people, this new future was incredibly bright. I mean, the Industrial Revolution created just a staggering amount of wealth, and that wealth gave rise to a whole new, really powerful social class.
And this was that new middle class. Now, these weren't your old-school aristocrats who inherited land. Nope. These were the factory owners, the managers, the engineers, basically anyone with skills that were super valuable in this new economy. You could say they were both the engine of this industrial age and the ones who benefited from it the most.
And wow, did their standard of living shoot up. For this group, industrialization meant a whole new level of comfort. We're talking new houses, better food, factory-made clothes. They could suddenly afford all of these consumer goods that were becoming cheaper and cheaper. It was a lifestyle that their parents probably couldn't have even dreamed of.
Okay, but that's just one side of the coin. That comfortable life, that was not the reality for the huge majority of people who flooded into Manchester. For the working class, well, their story was completely and tragically different.
Most working-class families ended up packed into these dark, filthy shelters. Think about it. Whole families crowded into just one bedroom. These places were thrown up so fast, with no sanitation, no clean water. Sickness was just everywhere. Fresh air was basically a luxury.
And this number is just shocking. 17 years. That was the average life expectancy for a worker in a big city. In the countryside, it was 38. Let that sink in. Less than half. The human cost here is just staggering.
Numbers like that are hard to wrap your head around. To really understand what it was like, we need to go beyond the stats and look at a real person. So let's talk about a young girl named Elizabeth Bentley, whose story really brings the human cost into focus.
Elizabeth started working in a flax mill when she was just 6 years old, an age when kids today are just starting elementary school. She was already working in a dangerous factory.
And her workday? It's almost impossible to imagine. She worked from 5 in the morning until 9 at night. That's a 16-hour day, and she did that 6 days a week. That wasn't just her job. That was her entire childhood. All that constant, repetitive work for all those hours, it just took a terrible toll on her little, growing body. When she later testified about it, she said, and this is her own words, "I cannot express the pain all the time it was coming." She's talking about the physical deformities caused by the work. And the result of all that labor? The permanent damage. By the time she should have been in the prime of her life, she was left with weak ankles and crooked knees. She was basically disabled. Her body was a living testament to the real price of making linen.
So now we zoom back out. Because Elizabeth's story, well, you have to multiply that by tens of thousands of people. That was the story of Manchester itself. It was a city of incredible extremes, a place of amazing creation, and at the same time, just heartbreaking destruction.
And it's so important to see both sides of this coin. On the one hand, yeah, industrialization created jobs for thousands. It generated incredible wealth. It filled people's homes with all kinds of new consumer goods. But the bad? The flip side, it was a nightmare of widespread sickness and disease, incredibly dangerous working conditions, and constant, frequent accidents and injuries.
And there was another price being paid, one we're still dealing with today, the environmental toll. The very air and water were victims of all this so-called progress. A thick layer of coal smoke just hung over the city all the time. The air was polluted. And the dyes from the textile factories, they were dumped straight into the rivers, poisoning the water supply.
So as we wrap up, what's the takeaway here? What is Manchester's complicated legacy? It's not a simple story, right? There are no easy good guys or bad guys.
At the end of the day, Manchester really was a city of incredible innovation and wealth. It truly laid the groundwork for our modern world. But, and this is the crucial part, it was all built on the backs of a suffering working class. That progress was paid for with their health, their childhoods, and far too often, their lives.
And that's why the story of Manchester isn't really just history. It leaves us with a huge question we are still trying to answer today. That drive for progress, for innovation, for growth, it's still here, it's as powerful as ever. So the question is, how do we continue to balance that drive for progress against its human and environmental price? That, right there, is Manchester's complicated and enduring lesson.